Hi, me and Bella have just finished our first conversation of five. And like with Islam, she said 5 conversations. So I know I need to up my game in explaining what this series of podcasts really is. It is 5 conversations with 5 people, not five in total, 5 conversations with each of the five. But you hopefully know that because you're here listening. And if you didn't know, well, now you know. Me and Bella, we have talked a lot about self awareness, radical self awareness, even, and about how coming from a place of self awareness in the world, well, how that shapes the dance of life in a sense. That might sound a little bit cryptic, but you'll get it once you listen in. So I hope you do. And I hope you enjoy. Hi!
I'm nervous.
You are?
Yeah,
Well,
it'll
I
go away in a
promise I
moment.
won't bite.
Oh, it's not about you.
No, kind of
It's
figured as much.
it's
But
exposed. It's very exposing and a little bit vulnerable. And I think what I'm nervous about is that when I feel that way, sometimes I don't allow myself to like share in the most authentic way. And so I'm hoping that in a few minutes, I'm just going to forget that this is being recorded and sort of just get much more immersed in conversation rather than in, the whole idea of who hears it and what happens to this conversation after.
and I mean, there's a both and. Me and Allison had that conversation in, I don't know, episode so 13 or something about how uncomfortable she was that it was actually being recorded and put out into the world, even though she'd accepted and all of that
Mhm.
stuff.
I don't
And
think it's about accepting or not accepting. It's just, I experienced that in performing with my music as well. Like it's a different feel when you're sharing it.
yeah, it is. And that's something that me and Matthew and Inma, or Imma as she's now called, um, spoke about also in the second season, how the recording itself is also an entity.
It really is.
It's a
Yeah.
third part in this. It is um and
Yeah.
it's cool. Now I'm just kind of linking back to episodes, but me and Steve of last season also, we were in a very parallel um, process of
Mhm.
personal development. So, basically, we had 5 conversations about that, more or less. And then Steve has reverted back to me that when he's listened to them, listening to him a couple of months after the conversation took place, wow, what a gift to him. Because he's done the bears painting in the back there, and he's a lovely writer, and he keeps journals and stuff. And kind of adding on this layer of conversation, of deep, personal, honest, vulnerable conversation was just wow. That's like another type of snapshot. Um,
I very much relate to that because I have heard myself when I've recorded myself playing. And honestly, like I can't listen to it right away, but then 6 months on, I will listen back and I will be both impressed and also surprised with how self critical I had been when I first listened.
Mm.
And so I realized that the bird's eye view through the lens of time allows us to see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And it can absolutely be a gift. It can be a gift of remembering yourself in that moment of time and being able to, for me, it's like being able to see the things that the values I had that I didn't value in that moment. And I can see it from the time distance.
And I wonder if that's there's a Ray Dalio quote that I see misquoted. Ray Dalio, this I don't know, hedge fund investment, Berkshire Hathaway, I think, or no, well, whatever, some type of really super duper financial institution investment person, right? I've seen it misquoted as if you don't look back on what you did a year ago and feel ashamed of yourself, you haven't moved enough, you haven't tried enough. And I go, I really don't
Quite the
like that.
opposite.
Precisely. But I, what I then heard him say, or I read the book, or I listened to the book, was more that if you don't look back on what you did a year ago and think, it's like more with this, oh, that thing back there? Oh, wow. I've moved on, or I've kind of grown. I've gotten several more perspectives, etc. So he didn't say you should feel ashamed of yourself, because I don't think that's valuable at all. But the aspect of looking back, like you say, through the lens of time and see, ha, I thought that, did that, sounded like that, looked like that. And if you can do that with kind of gentle and curious eyes, sprinkled with empathy, it's like, I think that's a good. It's like looking back on pictures of yourself when you're like 13 or something. You go, oh my God, that haircut or that
Do you know,
makeup.
I have exactly the opposite experience.
Tell me.
Well, I think as a person who always desires to find my blind spots and my what's missing in what I do, I'm so focused on those, on what's missing in it, what's not there yet, that I often am very unfocused on what is there.
Mm.
I have a recurring experience of looking at pictures of myself at 13, at 18, at 22, and saying to myself, man, I was so beautiful. What was I on about hating myself?
Yeah.
And I have the same very experience with my music, like hearing something I recorded years ago and seeing, oh my God, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
And at the time, all I could see was what was missing, even though what was missing was maybe 5%.
Yeah.
But that's all I can see in the moment. And I think it has to do with like, I think a person who works with investment and who is a male has this authority and this given like entitlement to feel like he's doing things right, which I don't have. I constantly question that. And so for me, looking back in those experiences is much more of an affirmation of how much right already I had and how little actually the movements need to happen. We all evolve. I don't want to be the same person as I was then. But what a bulk of that person was already pretty darn valuable. And I wasn't seeing it because I was so focused on what needs to be done more.
So, is that still true? Or have you been able to take this insight or understanding or knowing and can you sprinkle your now with this?
Yes and no. There are times when I can,
Mm.
and there are times when I cannot. And I am always curious what makes those times when I can be those times when I can. And what makes those times when all I can focus on is the missing part, however little it is. And so, yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Have you f- sort of have you figured it out? Do you know the formula? Shitty mood plus anxiety plus
Hmm.
somebody told me something bad equals I will not look and see all of me, or is it like, do you
No,
see any
I
just
have not figured out a formula. I don't know that if there's a formula, it's that simple. Um, but what I am figuring out is recognizing that, oh, right now, the formula is for me to focus on the criticism rather than on what's already in place that works. And there are times when I can focus on the things like I feel that the evolution is that I more often am able to recognize in the moment what already works.
Mm,
Not all the time, but more often than I used to.
mm. Which again is that type of progression that is kind of life.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
right? It's
I
like
yeah.
we add on and see other things. What comes to mind for me is this aspect of the meta me that can look at the experiencing me and see that I am experiencing something, and be aware of kind of within the three principles, which is a psychological model, you can say, of the world. There's there's a kind of an analogy of, or a metaphor of, being in an elevator. When you're down in the cellar, it's cold, it's wet, there's spiders and rats, and you're alone, and it smells like mold, and it's like, you can't see anything, and the life is shit. And then on the seventh floor, top of the building, blue skies, clear, sunny, you can see however far, there's nothing that you can't face, right? So, and that being kind of an image for how resourced I am, how much, what the quality of my thought is in the moment. It's like when I'm in the basement, it's a shitty time to make big decisions or anything because I can't see anything. It's dark. It's like, but when I'm up on the seventh floor, anything's possible. I can manage anything. Not life is without issues. It's just that throw them at me, I can deal with them, right? Um, and how that's what my meta me helps me with. It can kind of help me to see that, okay, girl, you are on second floor and you're headed down. Okay, and then there's no doing to get out of that. There's no, okay, I hit the stop button and then hit 7 instead and go up. I mean, it's like it doesn't work like that, right?
No.
But just the knowing of that
Mhm.
has made me more gentle with myself, more
Yeah,
able to be with me in the cellar. It's like we'll get through it. It is not forever because no state is
it's
forever. No
forever.
state of mind is forever, right? So you will in time. And in the meantime, I'm here with me. Um,
You're describing it in a very different way, but I feel like you're describing the same experiences I have of like recognizing, okay, I'm in the dumps. I call it
yep,
the dumps. And that doesn't mean I have to like get out of the dumps. I can stay in the dumps until I'm done staying in the dumps. And this has come with the last 5, 6 years to allow myself to stay in the dumps until I'm done with the dumps so I can go up like without the baggage.
seriously.
Because when you go up that elevator and you're not done being in the cellar, you're taking all the rats with you.
Yeah,
And
and you
so,
will be headed down pretty soon. It's like it doesn't really
yeah,
work.
yeah. But it's funny because my new place is on the top floor. And that was um one of the really big selling points for me is the
Cool.
view and the feeling of light and the skylights and um
Yeah.
so when you said that I just kind of smiled inwardly because I said I
Yeah.
wonder if that unconscious choice was made partly because of that.
Yeah. And actually it just made me reflect. Last weekend was a weekend of much drama um for a member of my family. Nothing, nothing dangerous, but a lot of emotional uh drama, truly drama. But I was I was in a state. Um so I went for a barefoot walk in the evening at I don't know 8:30 or something. I headed out barefoot to ground myself, to get the earth. And I knew that I wanted to go to I live just next to a recreational area that used to be an airport. So it was totally flat, but they've molded it. So they closed that airport down in 79 or some, late 70s, I think. So it's like it's grown now, but they've molded it. They've taken piles of dirt from other places and they're like, so there's this big hill, big by Skåne standards. I live in like the flattest part of Sweden. But so it's a really lovely, to go. Um toboggan is it what it's called, right? Toboggan? Toboggan? No? When you go on a sled in the like or a little in the winter,
Okay.
pulka in Swedish. Not
Okay.
skiing, but you sit in a little thing and you go whoop down the
Yeah. Sled.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a little one of those. So that's the hill, and I knew I wanted to go there. So I went there, and from there you can see
Everything.
far and wide. So that very same sense of kind of needing to see, that there is clarity, there is space. It isn't this like claustrophobic, um, shut down feeling or sensation in my body, but I can just. So I went up there and I howled. I howled at the moon. It was full moon the day after, so um, I was howling And it felt great. It felt really, really great. And it's just one of those. I've always walked. Whenever I've been in distress, I've walked. As a kid, I walked for hours along, like, no longer used train tracks and stuff. But it's always been walking, and it's been quite, like, contained. It's like it's walking. It's not arms flailing and shouting. It's like it's been pretty contained that way. But so to go up on that hill and just howl, just that felt, um, it felt as if I gave what was inside of me voice or a body of sorts.
Room to be.
Room to be, precisely letting it out. It doesn't have to stay inside of me. It doesn't have to be contained within, but just that really helped.
I kind of feel like if we don't do the work to let those things have the room to be, we can get ill.
Mm.
And I feel like it's been really important to carve out room for all those things to come out, no matter whether it's in the form of howling or crying or yelling or walking with anger or singing with joy or whichever it needs to be, or playing and expressing my emotions through that. Like, I think I feel very lucky that this entitlement to let those things out was not repressed out of me. That through my entire life, that has been something I have felt entitled to do. And not always aware that I feel so, and not always being able to express it in the moment, but always feeling like I have the right to let those things out. That's just a human right to me in a funny way.
So
And yeah,
I'm just curious because I think my experience is the opposite. I don't. I feel like it has been repressed out of me, to a large extent, and I'm rediscovering that aspect of me. I'm reclaiming that aspect of me. I'm like, I'm unfolding myself in such a way that that very base way of being in the world is allowed to take room, like you say, to actually be there. But how was that not repressed out of you, in the sense of, was this, were you encouraged, or were you just not shamed, or did your parents do the same thing so that you saw them doing it, and hence kind of, here's an example, this is how you do? Or did they sit down and talk to you? It's like, or is
none
it
of
just none of
none
them?
of the above,
Hmm.
because I don't think, I mean, there are aspects in which I don't always feel entitled to claim my space and claim my wants. But I never felt like I don't have the right to want. I felt like, okay, I can want it, but there's no space to claim that want.
I have a big B, I think. I'm just gonna see if I can get.
For sure.
Oops, word. Adventure. That way. Yes. Yes, that way.
Success.
Success. That was an adventure. Oh well.
Yeah. I feel like it's not that somebody like said, "Oh, please, Bella, here's room for you to have your wants." It was more like I have wants, and in their core, they're legitimate. Whether I can express them and fulfill them right now or ever is a whole separate story. Whether I can express them and fulfill them, those wants and needs, doesn't mean that I'm allowed or not allowed to have them. That those wants come for a reason and they come as a logical sequence or consequence of something that previously happened. And I think this has been one of those saving things that even when I am not allowed to express my wants, I don't go and say, well, those are not legitimate wants and needs.
Cool.
That they can stay inside me as legitimate. And I think there have been plenty of times, I'm not speaking in absolutes, this like constantly fluctuates and it changes with the circumstance I'm in. But in my late 20s and early 30s, I really tried to belong to a group of people by suppressing my wants and sort of pleasing that group and wanting to really fit. And no matter what I did, I didn't belong. And for a long time, I thought it's because of some kind of deficiency that I have until I understood that no, it isn't. It's because that group couldn't contain me like the way I was at the time. It was threatening to that group, or it was uncomfortable to that group, or it did not allow them to stay in their bubble, or whatever it was. But it was not due to my deficiency. And I think failing to make it myself belonging into that group was both my most excruciating pain and my biggest sort of grace and savior because it allowed me to understand that this neither made me nor broke me. That I didn't get to belong to this group. And that was that. There was no, like, that did not disvalidate me as a person. That
So it
just made the group incompatible with who I was at the
yeah,
time.
yeah. It makes me really, really curious to know how you experience shame with regards to these wants of yours. Because I think that is where the really strong link for me is that
Mhm.
I have a belief that I'm here to serve others. And I have a belief that's tacked onto that that says at the expense of me.
Yeah.
Bad combination, people. Bad combination, right? And then, which also then means that wants, need, lust, desires, etc., get really like screwed up inside of me because then it can't be at the expense of me anymore. That is like, ooh, love that. Give me that. And my system kind of says, no, that's not for you. So shame is like I have shamed myself and or I have been shamed. It's like you say, it's not absolutes. It's
Mhm.
this mix of what we grow into, and how we grow into it from experiences and people around us and thoughts and whatnot. But I I still struggle with what you say so beautifully, where you just say that that your wants are legitimate, period. Regardless if you act on them or not, or if it's, in the moment or not. It's just, man, I sit here going, wow, can I get me some of that, please?
I
Because
mean, like,
my internal experience is that I am not allowed my wants.
if your wants were illegitimate, to use any term, why are they there?
Yeah.
Because wants are like signals, right? Of or needs, they're signals of something that is not random. And it's not a function of I'm spoiled or I'm taking too much on myself. And I think, oof, this could be a little bit touchy of a subject, but I think I can attribute that to my coming from a very secular family where not that we thought that we were the most important thing, but we also didn't think that we were inherently flawed.
Hmm.
I feel myself inherently not flawed, and make plenty of mistakes, and I have plenty of flaws. But the flaws are in my process, not in my core being.
That makes me so happy to hear.
Because why would I like have a need or a want if there wasn't some kind of a really good reason? Whether I understand that reason or not doesn't mean it's not there, and it doesn't mean it's not legitimate. And the flaw can be in my misinterpreting it as illegitimate instead of asking, what is this fulfilling?
Mm.
And then asking, is this a good time to try to fulfill it? Or do I need to step aside and allow others to fulfill theirs or other circumstances to take place without making what I need and want wrong? The both end that they can exist. And then it becomes a matter of timing, of like, when is gonna be a good moment for me to take advantage and own my need? And when is gonna be a moment for me to step back and be of support of the needs of others? But it doesn't mean that my need can't exist. It can be there. And I have to say that in a previous conversation, you were the one who very gently and very supportively pointed out that I had overstayed my putting myself aside, and it was time to put myself a little bit more in the front. But I didn't take that as a flaw of mine. I took that as there's a need for adjustment of timing.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, I remember that conversation.
It was so helpful.
Mm. And it's like super fascinating to me how you and me come at this here and now. And in one of the books that I've read multiple times last year and many years before that, Ishmael by Daniel Quinn, which is a fictional story, but basically telling the story of why humankind are where we are. Like, how did we come to get here to this point where society, look around, where are we at? Oh, yeah, it's because this, and the other thing. And one of the things that he points to in this book is that, you know, being born eternally sin, being in eternal sin, being born flawed, being born, human humans are born like the story of syndafallet, we call it in Swedish, when, Adam and Eve are let out of the Garden of Eden, and you know, that thing. And he just flips it in the most fantastic way, in the way that you just flips it as well. Like, it isn't in our DNA that we are flawed. It is not.
Precisely.
It is a cultural artifact. It is in the culture that we are. Um,
It is
and
also something we're very indoctrinated with.
it is, and it's everywhere. You can find it everywhere. Uh, and you
It's
kind of
a
go,
really bad driver for real evolvement, though.
it is, which is kind of, oh yeah, that might be one of the reasons why we are where we are. It's like, uh-huh, yeah, that thing. um,
I don't know if you remember that the last time we chatted, and I still am so fascinated by how shame and guilt color our vision and response to the reality around us, and how they can at times act like a blanket of fog that obscures our ability to see ourselves and others.
say more about that.
When I brought a grievance to my mother, she went and spun in this cycle of guilt because she felt really responsible for having caused that grievance. And at the time, I knew she wasn't trying to cause the grievance. And I wasn't trying to tell her, hey, you're causing me grievance because you're being insensitive. What I was trying to say is, your desire to be helpful misfired into something else. And I have a different need from you. And what I was trying to say to her was, this is my need from you right now, in this moment. And she couldn't hear the need because she was so inside that guilt. All she could talk about was how she was flawed as a mother to me. And I'm like, this doesn't help me. This
No,
is, I am sorry that you feel that way. And I'm sorry that I'm inducing this in you, but this isn't what I'm trying to talk about. And so it both didn't help her, but it also didn't help me feel like she saw what I needed. My need became like stayed obscured. And I haven't yet been able to rebroach that subject because I feel like it's a completely valid subject, but I can sense that the time hasn't come where she is able to receive it without that fog
coming in. Yeah.
of guilt. And that time may never come, and I'm okay with that because I'm grateful for what she has already been able to receive from me that I didn't expect she would be able to. But was my want and need that I was trying so eloquently and so clearly to express unvalid? No. Was her guilt invalid? No. They just made a bad cocktail
Yeah,
together.
precisely.
And most of the time, I view each one of us as these like beings wrapped in fog of sometimes guilt, sometimes shame, sometimes feeling of inadequacy. And we so much want connection, and these fogs prevent us from actually reaching to each other, which is why I hate these things because they actually separate us and fragment us. And then each one of us feels so alone in their own experience, for which there's no need because there are literally thousands and millions of people in similar experiences if we just got past the fog to see through.
I have in therapy with Dominic. Uh, I have, I, I think, described what you're pointing to as this. I'm stuck in blubber. Like there's such a big layer of blubber or, insulation or just that it doesn't matter if somebody's patting me on, because that's like 10 meters from me. It's
It
like
gets lost.
it gets lost. It doesn't connect. And, I can wobble in the middle of that big blob of blubber. It doesn't make a difference. Nothing comes out either. So it's a deep sense of seeing that for me awoke a deep, deep grief
And I
of the
think that,
loneliness of being locked in that place where I'm just, I can't be touched, but I can't touch.
and I think that blubber is the very expression of the shame and the feeling like we're inherently flawed. Because if we didn't feel that way, we would just treat those things like you treat the bee in your nose, you just shoo it away,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, precisely. Open the window because you're going to be much happier outside than inside.
And so will I, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's one of the things that I've been kind of bumping up against in therapy is this aspect of motherhood. My kids are quite big by now. They're soon to be 18 and 23. But owning all of the flaws that I have done as a mother without getting lost in that fog of guilt for all of the flaws that I have perpetuated as a mother and not, like you say, not put that aspect of me as a mother front and center with my kids Because then chances are the loop will just keep on, keep on, keep on, keep on. But rather, this aspect of flaws, yes,
Uh,
and not go into, oh, I wish, because I wish I had been a better mother because then my kid wouldn't have had this experience. It's like, oh, that's where the break, that's stop.
that's where we can take a different turn because
Precisely.
flaws, yes. How can I respond at this moment to the flaws that happened then so it doesn't perpetuate it in my child?
Yeah.
And most of the time, it starts with me accepting, yeah, this is where I was. And then coming to my child and saying, I know this really impacted you. This is where I was when I did it. This is what it was motivated by. And I know better now, and I want to do it this way now instead. That maybe is more helpful to you. And now we're not stuck in the, what did you call it? The blubber?
The blubber. Yeah.
Yeah. Because now we're looking at how to exit that situation in a way that doesn't leave scars.
Mhm.
I have made plenty of mistakes with my child. And my kiddo is about to turn 14. So we are in the middle of teenagehood.
Mhm.
And I am both alarmed and kind of laugh inside because I recognize myself in it. I remember how I used to think that way. And I hear things like, this was very hurtful to me when you did it. And I have to say, yep, it really was, wasn't it? Let me give you a little bit of context of where this doing came from. And let me also give you a context of what do I want to do going forward instead of it because that misfired. But if I can't accept that I wasn't able to rise to the best I wanted to be at the time, I can't move on because I'm
No.
stuck in this bad feeling about myself. And then it becomes about me and not about the other person. And the other person remains unseen.
And that's what generates these loops of behavior, these loops where, you can talk to couples or siblings for that matter, where if I say this, she'll say that, and then I'll do this, and then she'll do that, and then explosion.
Mm,
It's like, right? Down to the minutest little detail, precisely. I mean, siblings rock at this in general. It's like they know precisely what's the little button to press so that boom goes my sister or brother or whatever, right?
And it's a dance that they dance together and they're familiar with
Yes,
every single step.
yes, yes,
And in a sense, they're in agreement with each step. But if one of them takes a different step, the other also has to change the dance.
exactly. And that precisely is that is what I am doing internally within my inner siblings. It's like these inner characters where I know that this one will lead to this one showing up to say this. And, it's like, so exactly that. It's just inside of me.
Mm,
And
mhm.
either part, or, however many characters of me are involved in that dance, if one of them does or doesn't do the expected, boom, totally new picture, totally new
Yes.
dance. something else
Yes.
has to happen because all of a sudden I can't do that thing that you usually let me do by it's like you're not there. Oh, what do I do now? Um and
Okay.
it's been fascinating to like I'm I'm deep within me now. So those characters of mine are like it's like they're archetypal in me. You know, it's like it's not recent inhabitants. It's like they're really deeply there from a long time. Um, possibly even, carrying over from generations that have come before, even into like here. Okay. So that's also an aspect. What has been carried over?
I think each and every one of us carries over these generational,
Yeah.
I don't know, baggages
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
inheritances or,
Yeah.
yeah,
And how
they're
do
just
I then
different.
stop to dance in that way that they know how to be? It's like so
Yeah.
that
I mean, we also want to kind of recognize that you don't always want to completely stop the dance. Maybe you just want to change one of the steps and keep the rest of them good, like the same. Because sometimes, as a double immigrant, I have stopped and gone into two different countries to dance completely different dances.
mm,
And both times there was a real danger of me losing myself because I was so busy dancing differently. And I find that after all these years of acclimating to different cultures and to different languages and to different people and to different responses, it's time to come back here and allow the outside to acclimate to me because there's something inherently useful to the outside also that I can contribute if I only allow it to come out. If I suppress it, it's not going to be of use to me or anyone else.
no.
So I have gone the other extreme where I've changed the dances so much. I am a Bulgarian um, secular Jew who went to Israel to find out that I wasn't nearly Jewish enough for that country, who came to the United States to revere the American culture and the yes mentality rather than the no mentality. The yes can do, who came to play the music of the Irish people who have a whole different, you know, set of mentalities. And I've always gone to sort of change the dance. And you can overchange the dance too.
Yeah, and in a sense, that can be a dance. That can be one of the loops, right? It's
Mhm,
like, okay, I
mhm,
will always do this thing to disturb the thing. It's like, okay, well, then you're in a
exactly.
loop, in the same way. It's like, it is that,
And the loop has been of self denial in a sense.
yeah, yeah, which I
And
think a
so,
lot of loops are.
yeah, well, you're right. That's the
Mm,
truth.
mm. But I had a session on Monday um, with Dominic, process oriented therapy. And then a friend of mine sent me a poem by Chelan Harkin that
Okay,
I have here. May I read it?
please.
And then I can explain how I think it connects. But it's beautiful to me, at least. So it reads, when I opened my heart, I caught God kissing the devil right there in the bedchambers of my chest. It was quite the scandal and pretty much toppled everything. Right and wrong were like, whoa, we can do that? And rushed into each other's arms. The affection that began between good and bad would have been fiercely scorned by most of the angels had they been living by the stringent doctrines of their past. But they'd already stripped naked and started running through my whole body, hipping and hollering, and causing a holy ruckus of pure aliveness. In that moment, every evil touched its original innocence, and nothing could any longer be bothered with investing its blessed life in the deadening work of judgment. And as the veil was pulled off of every part of the world I'd once cloaked in shadow, suddenly nothing was not my bride. I just love
I
it.
love that. That's beautiful.
Yes, because to me, that was so helpful to see that right at the cusp of having had that session where this aspect of Dominic said something, and I immediately judged myself for not having been better, you know. And then he said something to help me see that, oh yeah, I'm judging myself. What if instead, because he just said something that completely flipped it around, and I went, maybe that was a good thing, you know. Oh, it's a really bad thing. Maybe that's a good thing, you know.
And maybe it's both.
And that was the point. That was precisely the point. It's like both of those are aspects of me, the right and the wrong, the good and the bad. They are there. But again, to be in movement there makes me not stick, not get stuck, not be static, in the sense that when you said that I nudged you in that conversation we had in the fall sometime, where you had been hanging out too long in the I'm here to serve somebody else, my needs will have to take a back seat for a moment. It's like, yeah, you'd been stuck there for a little bit too long. It's like that kind of nudge, not it's bad to be there. But if you're there for too long, it's gonna get harder and harder. It will serve you less and less. And it will be harder to get out of there, too. Um,
I
that's what
kind
that
of,
poem says to me.
yeah, it's also sort of like disassociating certain parts of ourselves from ourselves. Like, why do we only have to be good? Why can't we own our lust, and why can't we own our um, selfishness, and why can't we own our gluttony, or you know, why can't we own our jealousy? Why can't we own our need to be seen? Why can't we own our need to be at the center of somebody's universe once in a while? Like, why is that pushed into the closet of dusty, bad things that the
Yeah.
door
You
never gets
shouldn't do
opened?
that, not if you're a good person.
Excuse me. We all do all of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
We all are incredibly philanthropic and incredibly selfish and tight fisted in turns.
Yeah.
I think I came with this term that probably is used so much, and I don't know, but I call it like radical self acceptance. That you don't just accept and look at the parts of yourself that you approve of. You also accept and look at the parts of yourself that society has taught you to scorn.
Which to a T describes this turn of personal development therapy that I'm doing. The first turn of 20 years ago or 15 years ago kind of had me go into building this persona of the good stuff, right? And it has served me in many, many ways. Absolutely. But now it's a little bit hard to let go of that image of myself, um,
It's
because it
almost
has served me. And I am in this, like, really what you're saying also with your wants. It's like, it's there, period. You know, I don't have to act on everything, on every emotion, everything that I feel and what I want in every moment. That's not it. But it's there,
I
period.
can still acknowledge it.
Yeah.
It's funny how this being good becomes our identity.
Yeah.
And then I think that's why it's hard to let go of it almost. Because then what are we? And can we foster an identity of a mixed bag?
Precisely. There was, I wonder if that was a Maya Luna episode that I listened to, or somebody else, about this. Why does it have to be good girl, bad girl? It's
It's a
good,
girl.
bad girl. It's bad, good girl. It's like, it is.
It's
It's
a
not.
girl.
It's girl. Yeah, precisely. It's girl. Because there's also naughty girl, and there's also funny girl, and there's also sad girl. It's like all of those.
And needy
Um,
girl and jealous girl and pouty
yeah,
girl. And
yeah,
all of those are part of us. And all
yeah.
of those are valid. And there's room and time to express each and every one of them. Because if we just suppress some of them, it's like fragmenting our soul and putting certain fragments in a dark closet. And then we feel the void because those parts of our soul are not expressed.
I was in a conversation in a community about validation,
Mm,
about being validated as a person, being validated for your creations, being validated for what you put out into the world. And this, what we're speaking about here, was such a presence in that thread that it's bad to want validation. It's bad to need validation. It's bad to do something and be really thrilled when people like it. It's bad to be joyful, when somebody gives you a like or sends you a comment or anything, because I should be it's like, and it was so interesting to kind of pick up on that thread, because I do believe that being seen and heard, that is innate needs of
mhm.
humans, because we
Because
are
we're,
pack creatures. We live in groups.
and then we survive in groups too.
Yeah.
And if you're not seen and heard, it could mean that you're not going to survive
Yeah.
in one sense or another. So, who labeled that as bad?
Yeah.
And I think that's where growing up without those descriptions, and I don't mean that I like didn't get shamed and blamed for things at all. I did. But there wasn't this inherent assumption that I had a sinister side to me that was just waiting to explode and come to the forefront. And I think that a lot of societies sort of have inadvertently done that, where certain traits do not influence the pack well. So they become undesirable because they're threatening the survival of the group.
Which kind of is paradoxical too, because again, we get more of what we focus on if we are so, you know, which also means that if I really don't like your behavior right now and I put all of my focus to make you stop doing that, well, bingo, I'm seeing you as that I don't want it to be. You'll just do more and more and more of it. Um, and I saw I'm back on Twitter since a year,
Mm.
and kind of enjoying it. But I stumbled across somebody who put out this nasty thread about somebody that I know, and it fascinates me to no end. It's like, if you're so bothered, why do you read this person? Why do you follow this person? Why do you engage with this person or with people around this person? It's like so much energy going into this thing that at what is seen is, I really, really, really don't like this thing or this person. It's a bad person, and it just it it just fascinates me.
I will counter that because one of my childhood friends always used to say, better have negative attention than no attention. And I have had the experience of when somebody doesn't like something, they just walk away with no explanation, with no reaction. They just walk away. And yes, what you describe is definitely somebody's attempt to influence another person's conduct, which really isn't their place to do.
Business. Mm.
But there's the darker side of that, which is that when somebody sees me and feels like they can't influence me because I'm not going to allow it, they get uncomfortable. And instead of sitting with that discomfort, they prefer to walk away so they don't have to face it. So that's the other side of that coin, which is just as destructive to an individual within a group.
So is there a third where I am walking away from the behavior of a person because, my boundaries have been uh,
Violated.
violated and I am honoring my boundaries. So I leave, I take myself out of a situation without, and I think this might be part of the gist of it, without resenting you for violating my boundaries, without bad mouthing you to
Mhm,
somebody else for violating my
mhm.
boundaries, you know, without carrying you with me, in a sense.
But
Just,
that requires you to say, I'm not going to try to change that person to fit my needs.
yes,
I am going to validate my own needs to me, not through that person validating them,
yeah,
because they're clearly not able to at this
yeah,
moment, but through me saying to myself, those needs are perfectly valid. Now I can decide when to express them and when to demand their fulfillment and where as well.
yeah, yeah.
Because that same person might not respect our boundaries at one time because they have some kind of trauma that they're living out of. And at another time, they might be the perfect person
Mm.
to answer those needs.
And I think that's the same type of loop. It's like
Mhm.
this person that I saw on Twitter. It's like, s- from my perspective, stuck in a loop of bad mouthing, talking down, throwing shit at. not realizing that when you throw shit at somebody else, your hands are filled with shit. It's on you. You can't not have it on you because you're slinging it like crazy. But not really seeing that. Again, not having the meta me say, "Hey, I'm throwing shit, but I'm knee deep in it. Is this where I want to be?"
Or I'm not trying to throw shit, but I'm trying to get myself heard by speaking louder and louder and louder and not realizing that the volume of my voice is not the reason why I'm not being heard. And so instead of speaking louder and louder, I pause and I allow the other person to either get out of their blubber or stay in it and then act accordingly. Because the reason I'm not heard is not my voice not being the appropriate volume, but rather that that person is not able to hear it for some really valid reason. It might be blubber, it might be they are deep in their emotional experience of the moment and don't have the emotional capacity to hear me in that moment, but maybe in another moment. So, what do I accomplish by speaking louder and louder? By pushing, I am also stuck in that cycle of ineffective action. And this person that you describe on Twitter had just as ineffective of an action by bad mouthing the person that they were bad mouthing as I had ineffective of an action to speak louder and louder in order to express something that the other person wasn't capable of receiving at the time. And I had to stop. And I am actually finding that that same person has moments in which they are capable of receiving it. And then it lands and I don't have to yell. And so I think when we get stuck in these things, it's because we're trying to express a need. And maybe there needs to be a differentiation if our need is to change somebody else, or if our need is to give room and voice to our own need. And I think sometimes people misfire that way by trying to change another person's behavior excuse me, instead of diving inside and finding what is that need and how can it be fulfilled either by that person or by another person or by another circumstance. But all those things always seem to me that they happen because there's some kind of a hurt that isn't being addressed,
Mm.
some kind of a loneliness, some kind of a feeling of lack, of scarcity.
Mm. There's something about this that reminds me of grasping, of efforting, of wanting so much that you're like basically trying too hard to get something, and that it's easy to get lost there. It's easy to lose sight of why did I start down this path, you know, a day ago or a year ago or whatever. It's like, what was that thing? Perhaps because I'm so stuck in the rut of the loop that I'm just doing this thing. I'm just bad mouthing this person because this is what I do. Because somewhere There was a need in me. I was afraid of what they said, or it felt uncomfortable, or I'm really, you know, whatever that thing is. And I don't have to invent those things, but it's still, it can make it easier for me to spot that type of rut in myself or loop. It can also make it easier for me to see it in somebody else. But one of the things that I'm starting to own a little bit, I'm resisting it, um, is the fact that there are people whom I don't want in my life. There are people who are nasty. And I don't, I have been so good in the past 20 years or so in seeing the good that's underneath the shit, so to speak. Right. And I do, at my core, I do believe that it's there in everybody. But I don't want to use that fact that there is a core of,
Mhm.
of human in every human as a reason to hang on, as an
Bingo.
excuse to, it's like, I don't want to use, it's like, no, just plain no. It's like, not in my life, not in my kid's life, nowhere near us, period. And so that is something that I'm, um, like I say, I'm doing it. I've had some practice now this past week with just this thing, or past week and
Really?
a half. And it's like, it's uncomfortable because I don't know how to do this anymore. This has been a long time. I have been so good at excusing behavior because down deep, there's a good person down deep. There's somebody who just doesn't know better down deep. There's somebody who I'm empathetic with, which then has me violating my boundaries no end,
Which it
right?
doesn't have to.
No, but that's
Because we
how
can,
I've done
yeah,
it.
yeah, this is that loop of either or. Like if they have anything good in them, they can't possibly violate your boundaries, which is not true. They
Yeah,
can have a bunch of good in them
yeah,
and they can, in the way they need to express their needs, be completely toxic to you
yeah,
at that time.
yeah,
Like what is it? Salt is toxic to snails and
yes,
essential to us humans, right?
yeah, yeah,
So if I gave a snail salt thinking, oh, because I need that salt, the snail needs it too, that snail is going to die.
yeah.
Okay. Um, I don't have to take somebody's essential components and let those violate my needs. I can acknowledge them and keep them there
Mm,
and say, this person needed to do this in order to have their own survival. And I can still be hurt by that. And I can still be heartbroken that they did that, which affected me gravely. And I don't need to deny that in myself. I am still allowed, even when I understand the other person's motives and actions, I'm still allowed to be negatively affected by them. Those two things can exist one with the other. And then I can make a choice of what distance do I keep that person at? Do I keep them here or there or in the other room or in another house or in another country? Because I recognize that while they're doing their very best for themselves, their very best affects me maybe in a wonderful way and maybe in a horrible way. And it's my choice where I position myself to that person without having to change the person, without having to ask them to alter their behavior.
So is that always the good thing to do, to not ask somebody to alter their behavior?
But we're not trying to do only good things.
Because I wonder if that was might that have been in the Esther Perel discussion group that somebody posted a link to an article about basically I think a man writing a column about why I left the dishes on the counter ended my marriage.
I remember that.
Yeah. And how that piece basically says that, for the duration of that relationship, wife puts things in the dishwasher, hubby puts glass on the sink, in the sink or on the counter, and just, is happy to reuse that glass 15 times. That's kind of what I do. I have a cup and I just have it for a long time. Um,
But that's
and not,
there is
yeah. And the interesting thing to that, because it challenged this trope of I'm the only person I can ever change. I can never change somebody else,
it
which is
it
a trope, which is not because I can influence everybody. So, and by influencing, I can effect change. I can
what
make you drink, but I can bring you to the water, right?
he could affect, and that's I interpreted the article that way. He could affect the fact that he was seeing his partner's complaints as baseless
Yes.
instead of seeing behind them. So
Yeah.
he preferred to avoid the layers underneath the complaint. There was an avoidance there. He wanted to see it as face value. His partner is nagging him. And that cost him the marriage, not the glass on the side of the dishwasher. The way he interpreted his partner's response was very surface level, two dimensional, incomplete. And there wasn't compassion and curiosity to see what's behind this.
Yeah. And I think that was the kind of the lovely little way that he ended it by saying that now I see,
Mhm.
and if I could do it over again, I would be putting my glass in the dishwasher. It's like,
Because he was able to
yes,
finally dive in.
yes,
So I don't know what the good thing to do is, but the bad thing to do is to have neglect of those little subtle underlaying layers, to have indifference towards it by just kind of labeling it as nagging or labeling it as bad or labeling it as bad mouthing or labeling it as careless. No, all of those things, they have very deep context, layers and layers of it, and motivation behind them. And when we see that, we no longer avoid seeing the bigger picture. You can't distance yourself from a person before you've seen that person deeply and in the context in a healthy way. You can avoid that person, but that's a whole another thing because you're not resolving anything. You're just kind of putting this void. And I think a lot of times in our culture, it's time consuming to have to like dive that deeply. And
mm.
people don't have the time or the energy or the desire to invest that kind of thing
Or
because
even the
we're all so busy.
or even the knowledge of how to. How do
Or
you go
even the
about
knowledge
it?
that that exists and they could do it, like that that's a
Yeah,
possibility.
yeah.
So, I mean, there's so much there, but I don't want to do the good thing. I want to do the real thing. And to me, the real thing consists of looking at all those layers of context. behind what's there, getting curious, and then drawing my conclusion if the mix with this individual is going to produce something that elevates us both or something that puts us down in the slums both, because it's going to probably work both ways.
Mm.
I got years ago bullied at a work situation, and the person who did it is deeply troubled. And me stating a boundary really threatened that person a lot, which is why they bullied me. They were really toxic. They tried to turn a whole tribe sort of to view me as the villain. They partially succeeded. I will not step next to that person because their needs are for me to give up my boundaries because they haven't tapped into their own self acceptance in order to tap inside for their needs. So they have to like draw them from other people. That is their choice. I cannot change that. But I know that I have to keep a distance from this individual. Do they do good things in the world? Yes, they do. Do they have a real good reputation within a certain like circles? Yes, they do. Does that make them the right person for me to have interacted with? Does that make me somehow inherently wrong? Nope. None of those. This is just oil and water. They need to not mix.
Yeah, and it is this again, this the poem. It is this, oh, we can be here together, both of us. Like not you and him or her
Yes,
like that, but the acknowledgement of yes, there's good in this person. Yes,
mhm,
there's bad in this person. Yes, they do good things. They are of service. And no, you
they're
know,
toxic at the
yeah,
same time.
at the same time, I think we have a, like, generally we, as in humans of today's culture, have a hard time with this both and thing.
The duality of experiences is really hard. I love how Esther talks about that actually.
How
She's
does she
really
talk about
eloquent.
that?
She talks about how difficult it is for us to accept, especially when it's somebody close to us, that they have a completely different experience from the same event as we do, and oftentimes contradicting from our own experience. And we feel unseen because their experience is so different. And there's this compelling need to prove that no, 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 ours was the experience. No, they both were. They both were real.
Since a few days back, I started to rewatch Downton Abbey on Netflix from season one. I'm on season three or something now, or maybe four. And have you seen it?
Nope. I've seen very little bit of it when I was visiting family.
Yeah. It's I would say it's a really, really it's fantastically made. The actors and there's nothing wanting in this show, but one of the main characters, uh, Mary Crawley, one of the daughters, is is stuck in that mode of it has to be my way. It has to be my way. So she's willing to basically throw away her marriage to the man she loves because they see totally differently to one aspect. And he's saying, "Uh, you have to understand the way I feel." And she says, "No, I don't. And I won't. And I won't accept it." And, he's like, and then somebody comes in and Tom Branson comes in and kind of talks to the her potential husband or husband to be and says that because he can also have this either or, you know, I can't. And Tom says, yes, you can, yes, you can. You can. So this, like, in a sense, just this being able to put this point of view next to that point of view and just look at them, just be with them. Maybe they're like, magnets of opposite poles that just repel each other. Okay, look at that. Just be with that. Feel into it. What is it like? What happens? It's like it doesn't they coexist. There's a
Further,
strong connection between two poles that are not drawn to each other. There's a strong connection there too. It's like just to just bear being in that state of uncertainty because
yes.
that's what it is.
And also that if I walk over to see your point of view, it does not mean that I'm abandoning and disvalidating mine. I am just temporarily leaving my point of view to come sit with yours
Mm.
and see it. And I don't have to feel like sitting with your point of view threatens my identity. And I
'Cause I
don't
think
have to
that's what it
allow
is.
it. Yes,
Mm,
it does. If that's exactly what it is. It's like,
mm,
oh, if I agree with this person's point of view, it automatically makes my opposing one invalid. And that's not true.
mm,
It doesn't have to be.
mm.
We can accept, if we really want to, we can accept multiple contradicting realities that live side by side and happen in a parallel fashion and can be connected and mutually beneficial rather than, like, let's turn the magnets on the side where they can connect rather than on the side that they repel each other,
Mm.
because then the magnet becomes stronger. Then we both can actually have a place to have a valid point of view. Because if we both can walk over to the other person's point of view and sit with it in empathy and compassion, we also create their ability to do that back to us if they already have worked on it.
Precisely. And
I
isn't
mean,
that
yeah,
where the discerning kind of comes
mhm,
to know through trial and error and
of
giving
course.
everybody the benefit of the doubt? Yes, but it's like not again, not at the expense of me.
And that's it. And if
Yeah.
you then make a decision that no, that person has to stay over there in the distance, that decision is so much stronger once you really put it through the stress test
Mm.
that is uncertainty.
Yeah.
Because then once you make that determination, wow, you can stop questioning.
Yeah.
You can just allow it to be. And that's less stressful. And you can also be open to those things changing in time and people evolving and coming to you with something different, saying, oh, look, this person had a change. Now I'm going to change my dance with them as well. I'm not going to dance in two different rooms with them. I might dance at a 5 meter distance this time. See what happens.
Yeah, precisely. Keeping the the discernment
Open.
open, precisely, but not flicking it out the window,
Mm-mm.
like not discarding it.
Mm.
Um,
But
I
that
think,
also like requires us to accept our gut instinct when something
yeah,
doesn't sit right with
yeah,
us. Like, and in accepting it, it opens the possibility of examining it and getting to the bottom of, does it not sit right with us because there's something uncomfortable within us? Or does it not sit right with us because that person is oil to our water?
yeah. Or sold to my slug.
Yes. Either way. Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, yeah. So this has been lovely, Bella. What happened to the nerves?
What nerves? It has been lovely. It has been a wonderful conversation. I want to have more just whenever.
And luckily, you will get to both our 4 more podcast conversations, but you and I will continue to have conversations anyway. Um, that I'm
Explain
pretty
about
sure of.
the 4 more podcast conversations, please.
Okay, so here's another one. The series is 5 by 5. So it's 5 people that I have 5 conversations with each.
Okay.
So you've signed up for 5 conversations with me. It's like Özlem was the same. And I'm going, how can I have missed making this clear? Um, 5 conversations with 5 people. So it's 25 conversations in total.
Love it. I'm
Good.
game.
Good. Yeah. And because for me, something happens when I get to go deeper, when I get to hook arms over time. Like you say, the bird's eye view that time brings makes for another thing than if this is just a one off.
It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And I feel like the only way I can feel healing with myself is to go deep.
Yeah.
The rest of it feels like fluff.
The rest of it's a type of blubber, isn't it?
Yeah. A little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a little bit of a buffer of a blubber before you open up,
Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
most of the time
Again,
that
it's
takes
it's not either or
no
in
every
anything of
yeah.
this. Yeah.
But yeah, let's have 4 more.
Good. Well, thank you for today.
Thank you. Thank you for being open and raw and yourself. I really, really appreciate these conversations. And I appreciate the impact you have in my life. As few times as we might have interacted and as far as we might live, I always feel like it leaves me with thoughts that then help. So I really appreciate it.
Good. And
So
it's it's you know, it's this is an aspect of me following my intuition. Remember we first met in uh a group conversation from that Esther Perel discussion group. And I think I sent you a text immediately after
you did.
saying that I really enjoyed talking to you. I enjoyed your wisdom. And if you wanted to meet up, uh,
Yeah, that was fun. I
yeah,
remember that.
yeah. Which,
And I'm
because it is one of those things. Oh no, you can't do that. You shouldn't say that. It's like there can be so much of that. Somebody on Twitter the other day, there's this Swedish account, a woman who writes the most beautiful reflections on life in Swedish. and she wrote something, a little thread, and I responded in the tweet saying, "I so appreciate how you write. That you write and the things you write about, but how you write, there's something so beautiful and it's it's like it warms my heart." And she responded back saying, "Wow, that means the world to hear that. That means more than I think it should mean, but it really does." So back to that thing of validation of being seen and heard.
Mm.
Um,
And actually, that's, yeah, in many ways, you're reaching out that felt maybe a little too brazen to you has been incredibly healing and helpful to me. So I'm really glad you did.
yeah. Well,
Please do more.
I promise I will. Well,
All
you
right,
go and
Helena.
enjoy the rest of your day.
And you too. And
I
we'll be in
will.
touch.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
See you later.
See you.